Hello! If you're visiting for the first time, it's fantastic to have you here. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. This video features mostly true scary stories with the sound of gentle rain in the background. If you're looking for something to help with sleeplessness, anxiety, or stress, you're in the right place. If you enjoy the stories, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. Thank you for being here. I have a spooky story to share that will send shivers down your spine and keep you on the edge of your seat. It's called The Haunted House on the Hill, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. As you settle in, make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. And guess what? I have something special for you. There's a magical weight loss dietary supplement that helps you lose weight even while you sleep. Curious? Click the link in the description below to learn more. Now, grab a blanket and let's dive into the eerie tale. As night fell, I stood at the bottom of a tall, dark hill. At the top was an old house that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. The windows were broken and the paint was peeling. I could feel a chill in the air, sending goosebumps up my arms. Everyone said the house was haunted, filled with strange noises and spooky shadows. But I was brave, or so I thought, and I wanted to discover the truth. When I started walking up the hill, the wind began to howl, making the trees whisper secrets to each other. With each step, I could hear the crunch of leaves beneath my feet, and my heart began to race. The closer I got to the house, the darker the path became, as if the shadows were trying to reach out and pull me back. Finally, I stood in front of the house, and my breath caught in my throat. The door creaked open as if inviting me inside. I hesitated, but curiosity pushed me forward. I stepped inside, and the air felt heavy, like a thick fog wrapping around me. I could hear the whispers of the past echoing around me, and the temperature dropped even more. As I moved deeper into the house, I spotted something strange. A dusty old mirror sat at the end of a long hallway. It was covered in cobwebs, and I tentatively wiped a corner clean. Suddenly, I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. Reflected in the mirror was a shadowy figure standing right behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. Just the eerie silence of the old house. Increasingly unsettled, I explored more rooms. Each one told a different story. Crumbling furniture and faded pictures seemed to witness something dark from long ago. In one room, I found a broken doll lying on the floor, its glassy eyes staring straight at me. I wanted to run, but I felt something keeping me there, a strange pull as if the house wanted me to uncover its secrets. Suddenly, I heard a loud thump from upstairs. It echoed through the halls, making the walls shake. I couldn't ignore it. I cautiously climbed the creaky staircase, each step sounding like a warning bell. As I reached the top, the thumping grew louder, more frantic. I looked around, my heart pounding, then something shifted behind me. I turned quickly and caught a glimpse of that shadowy figure again, just out of sight. A chill ran down my spine, and I felt an icy breeze brush against my cheek. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" My voice trembled as it bounced back from the empty walls. I took a deep breath and opened the first door I saw. Inside was a bedroom that seemed frozen in time. The bed was unmade, and the curtains fluttered even though there was no wind. I stepped inside, feeling the energy shift. That's when I heard a soft giggle echoing through the room. It wasn't friendly. I turned on my heel, ready to dash back, but the door slammed shut behind me. Panic surged through me. I banged on the door, shouting to be let out. All I could hear was that giggle growing louder, filling my head with fear. Suddenly, the room went cold, and I saw a mist forming in front of me. Unwanted memories flooded my mind, like flashes from another life. I felt trapped in a story that wasn't mine, and the laughter turned to wails. I squeezed my eyes shut, reaching for the door, praying it would open. Just as the laughter turned into a deafening roar, I was jolted back to reality as the door creaked open, and I stumbled out into the hallway, gasping for air. The house felt different now, almost alive. As I stepped back into the dim light of the corridor, a strange mist floated past me, curling around my legs like a lost puppy searching for its owner. Every breath I took tasted stale, like the air had not been disturbed in years. I quickly glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see the shadowy figure again. But all I saw were the remnants of what seemed like forgotten memories, shadows dancing at the edges of my vision. With my heart pounding in my chest, I cautiously stepped further down the hall. A door at the end beckoned me forward. It was slightly ajar, and a low, haunting whisper drifted through the crack. I felt drawn to it, but also terrified by what I might find. It was as if the house was inviting me to uncover its secrets, even as fear wrapped around my mind like a fog. I edged closer, feeling the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I pushed the door open, and it squeaked loudly, echoing like a warning. Inside, the room was small and cluttered with old furniture covered in white sheets. In the corner stood an old rocking chair, swaying gently as if someone had just been sitting there. I could almost hear the creak of the wood against the floor, but I was alone, or so I thought. As I looked closer, I noticed dark streaks on the floor. My stomach turned as I followed the trail with my eyes, leading me to a dusty chest that seemed out of place. My curiosity overpowered my caution, and I approached the chest. It had strange symbols carved into its surface, looking ancient and foreboding. As I reached out to touch it, a sudden coldness enveloped the room. I jerked my hand back, but the door slammed shut again behind me, trapping me once more. Panic surged through my veins, and I desperately pulled at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me like the wind during a storm. I pressed my ear against the door, hoping to hear something outside. Instead, I heard a faint voice, a chilling melody woven with sadness and desperation. It was calling to me, urging me to stay. The chest seemed to pulse with energy, as if something inside was awakening. Against my better judgment, I knelt beside the chest and pulled on the rusty latch. With a loud clank, it swung open. Inside lay a collection of objects: old photographs, a yellow journal, and a small, delicate locket. My fingers brushed against the locket, and in that moment, a jolt of electricity shot through me. My mind flooded with visions of the past. A little girl in a white dress, her eyes wide with fear, clutching the locket tightly. Suddenly, the world around me shifted. The room blurred, and I felt myself being pulled in different directions. Dark shadows danced along the walls, reaching for me, whispering secrets that made my heart race. I grabbed the locket, hoping it would protect me, and as I did, everything changed. The rocking chair began to move faster and faster, creaking loudly, while the whispers turned to shrieks. I stumbled to my feet, clutching the locket tightly. The shadows converged, forming a horrid shape that loomed above me. I could barely breathe, paralyzed by fear as I tried to back away, but found myself glued to the spot. Feeling trapped, I began to cry out, but my voice was lost in the chaos. The shadows seemed to mock me, and I could see faces twisted in despair floating among them, sorrowful eyes gazing directly at me, pleading for help. At that moment, I realized the house was not just a collection of rooms and memories. It was a prison for lost souls. I could feel the weight of their sadness pressing against me, and a chilling thought crossed my mind. Were they here because of me? Had I woken them from their eternal rest? With renewed determination, I turned back to the chest, my hand gripping the locket as if it were a lifeline. I could not let this house consume me. Not now. I quickly flipped through the journal, desperate for answers. The pages were filled with frantic writing, the words scratched and scrawled as if the person was losing hope. The darkness feeds on fear. One line read, "To escape, you must confront what lies within." My heart raced as I realized what I had to do. I needed to face whatever was in this house, to find out why it was haunted, and to understand the girl who had once lived here. But before I could gather my thoughts, the room began to tremble. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the shadows darted toward me. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of anxiety inside me. I whispered to myself, "I can do this." With the locket in hand, I stepped forward into the heart of darkness, ready to uncover the truth hidden within these haunted walls. Should I look for the girl? Was she still here, trapped like the others? Or could I free her, and in turn, free myself? The shadows lunged at me, but instead of backing away, I pressed on, determined to discover what lay ahead. I felt a strange warmth radiate from the locket, like a beacon of light cutting through the darkness. Each step was more difficult than the last, but I refused to give in to the fear that threatened to swallow me whole. My surroundings spun and shifted, forms coiling and curling like smoke, and the shadows whispered promises of terror and despair. Their cries echoed in my mind, urging me to turn back, but I couldn't. Not yet. I was so close to uncovering the truth, and I could feel it. The girl's spirit beckoned to me, calling out through the shadows, desperate for rescue. Suddenly, I caught a glimpse of her, a fleeting image of a small face with wide eyes staring at me from within the shadows. "Help me," she whispered, her voice softer than the wind. I froze, my heart racing as I met her gaze. The fear that had gripped me began to slip away. "Where are you?" I called out, my voice echoing in the vast emptiness of the house. "I'm here to help you." Determination surged within me. With every ounce of courage, I stepped toward the remnants of the past, the shadows swirling chaotically around me. I could feel the urgency of her plea pulling me deeper into the heart of the haunted house, where the line between fear and courage blurred with each passing moment. And just as I thought I had found my way, everything went black around me, the darkness swallowing me whole. I felt weightless, suspended in a void, as if I was being pulled between two worlds. Fear coiled tightly in my chest, and the silence grew thicker, wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. Then slowly, the darkness started to fade away, revealing a chilling scene that made my blood run cold. I found myself standing in a long-forgotten room, dimly lit by flickering candles placed haphazardly on crumbling shelves. The air was thick with dust, and a faint smell of decay hung around me. Ghostly shadows flitted across the walls, darting just beyond my vision, and a low murmur filled the room, like 1,000 voices sharing their secrets. I glanced around, my heart racing at the unsettling sight. It was then that I noticed the walls, covered with ancient portraits of people who looked both familiar and strange. Their eyes seemed to follow me, filled with a mix of sorrow and longing. As I stepped closer to one of the portraits, I froze in disbelief. The little girl in the painting wore the same white dress I had seen in my visions. With shaking hands, I reached out to touch the canvas, and in that moment, a sharp chill shot through my body. Suddenly, the room shifted again, and the faces in the portraits began to twist and contort, their mouths opening in silent screams. I stumbled back as the walls closed in, the flickering candles flickering frantically, casting long, distorted shadows that danced around me as if mocking my terror. "I have to find her," I whispered to myself, taking a deep breath and trying to steady my racing heart. As I turned to look for an exit, a door materialized at the far end of the room, its surface dark and inviting. The urge to flee was overwhelming, yet something pulled me closer. I felt like I was being guided, the weight of the locket in my pocket growing warmer with each step I took towards it. I could hear the girl's whisper again, softer this time, but filled with desperation. "This way," it echoed in my mind, a haunting melody urging me to uncover the terrible truth. As I reached for the door handle, I hesitated. What if I wasn't ready for what lay beyond? My heart raced as I swung the door open, revealing a long, narrow hallway lined with more doors, each one darker than the last. With determination, I stepped inside, the floorboards creaking under my weight. My senses went into overdrive. Everything felt heightened. The air was heavy with sadness, and an unsettling feeling crept up my spine. I moved cautiously, glancing at each door as I passed. They seemed to vibrate with an energy that drew me closer, waiting for me to take action. Suddenly, one door cracked open slightly, a sliver of light spilling out. I couldn't help myself. It was as if the light had grabbed hold of me, pulling me toward it. I pushed the door open wider, revealing a room filled with old toys scattered across the floor. A dusty teddy bear sat abandoned in the corner, its button eye gazing up at me, with a melancholy expression. Then came the laughter, the unnerving giggle of a child that chilled me to the bone. I spun around, searching for the source, but the room was empty except for the toys. The laughter echoed around me, growing louder and more sinister, mixing with the whispers of the other trapped souls hidden in the shadows. My heart pounded as I realized I was not alone, not in the slightest. I stepped forward, trying to be brave. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. The laughter stopped suddenly, leaving only a heavy silence. The room felt colder, and I could see my breath fogging in the air. It was as if I had crossed a line, and whatever was present was now watching, waiting for me to make my next move. Just then, the teddy bear toppled over, a gentle nudge as if something had pushed it from behind. The sound echoed in the stillness, and I held my breath, every nerve in my body screaming for me to leave. But I had come too far to turn back now. I stepped closer to the bear, my heart racing. As I knelt down, I noticed something beneath it, an old, tattered piece of paper. I pulled it out, my hands shaking as I read the words scrawled upon it. "Help her. She is lost." The message chilled me to the bone. Who was lost? The girl from the portraits? Before I could process my thoughts, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, and I was jolted back to reality. The laughter returned, but this time it was different, more menacing and filled with rage. I jumped to my feet, the fear bubbling within me, and ran out of the room. As I darted down the hallway, I could feel the walls pulsating, as if the very house itself was alive. The air crackled with energy, and a sudden gust of wind blew past me, slamming doors shut behind me as I raced forward. I had no idea where I was going, each direction looking the same as shadows swirled around me. The girl's voice echoed louder now, urging me not to stop. I turned a corner and quickly stumbled into another room, wide-eyed and breathless. This one was different. It was larger and more ornate, decorated with cobwebs and dust. It looked like a grand parlor, filled with old-fashioned furniture, but everything seemed to be pressed in on itself, as if the walls were closing in. I could see an ornate mirror at the far end, but as I approached, I felt a pull. The mirror shimmered, revealing glimpses of the little girl trapped behind it, her tiny hands pressed against the glass, pleading for a way out. "Help me," she cried, her voice breaking through the chaos around me. I reached out instinctively, my heart aching for her, but as my fingertips brushed against the cool surface, the mirror warped, and shadows clawed at me from every side, trying to drag me away. I felt trapped, like I was caught in a terrible dream where escape felt impossible. "Stay with me," I screamed, desperate to break the hold the shadows had on me. As if in response, the lights flickered violently, and the room suddenly erupted into chaos. The shadows lunged toward me, their forms twisting into grotesque shapes. "You can't leave. You belong to us," they hissed, their voices mingling with the girl's cries, creating a cacophony that drowned out my thoughts. I felt paralyzed by fear, struggling to comprehend the swirling madness around me. In that moment of overwhelming darkness, the girl's desperate gaze cut through the terror, her eyes shimmering with hope. "You can save us," she whispered, and an unexpected warmth surged through me, igniting a spark of courage in my heart. "No!" I yelled defiantly, standing my ground against the shadows. I would not let fear consume me. I took a step forward, fueled by both fear and resolve. "I will help you." Waves of energy flowed through me as the locket in my pocket began to glow. It pulsed with light, pushing back the darkness that threatened to overwhelm me. The shadows shrieked in anger, and I summoned every ounce of strength I had, calling upon the light within the locket to break the curse that bound this house. The shadows hissed and writhed, recoiling from the warm glow. "No, you cannot," they screeched, and with a final surge, the light erupted from the locket, illuminating the entire room. I felt a powerful force surround me, lifting me off the ground as the darkness dissolved into nothingness. In that ethereal light, I could see the frightened faces of the trapped souls, their expressions shifting from despair to hope. The little girl smiled at me, her eyes sparkling with gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you for not giving up." As the shadows faded, the room transformed. The once crumbling parlor shifted into a bright space filled with the warmth of sunlight pouring through newly cleaned windows. But as I looked around, I knew this wasn't the end. There were still more secrets hidden within the depths of this haunted house, and the girl's plea echoed in my mind. "Help me?" I felt a strong urge to uncover the truth behind her story, to understand why she and the others were trapped in this dark place. The remnants of the past were still haunting these walls, waiting for someone to remember them, to set them free. I could not turn back now. The adventure had just begun. With a deep breath, I looked down the hallway, knowing I had more to discover, more to fight against. The house still held its mysteries, calling me to confront the darkness lurking within. And I was ready to face whatever came next. As I stepped out of the bright parlor, everything felt different. The shadows that had once haunted me seemed to shrink away into the corners, like they were no longer able to grasp me. My heart still raced, but I could also hear a faint melody playing in the distance, a delicate yet haunting song that seemed to weave through the very fabric of the house. Drawn by the sound, I followed it, each step echoing in the silence surrounding me. The atmosphere was thick with an energy that pulsed beneath my skin. I turned corner after corner, the hallway twisting and curling like a serpent. The further I went, the stronger the melody grew. I felt as though I was being led deeper into an ancient riddle, one I desperately needed to solve. Suddenly, I found myself standing in front of a door I had not seen before. It was adorned with intricate carvings, each symbol glowing faintly as if alive. My hand hesitated over the handle, a pulse of fear creeping back into my chest, but the melody wrapped around me like a warm embrace, pushing me forward. I opened the door cautiously, the hinges creaking in protest as I stepped into what felt like another time and place. Inside was a grand ballroom, or at least it used to be. Once elegant chandeliers hung from the ceiling, long since covered in layers of dust. Broken furniture lay scattered across the floor, and the faded remnants of delicate silks still clung to the walls. In the center of the room, I could see a large, broken mirror reflecting only darkness. As the last echoes of the melody faded, an eerie silence reigned. I scanned the room, my breath hitching when I caught sight of shadows darting along the edges. I wasn't alone. Spectral figures began to emerge, wispy and translucent, drifting gracefully as if caught in a dance from a forgotten era. Their faces looked sad, longing for something lost in the depths of time. One figure caught my eye, a woman dressed in a flowing gown, her posture elegant yet heavy with grief. She turned to me, locking eyes that held centuries of sorrow within them. "Help us," she breathed, her voice slicing through the silence like a whisper of wind. "We are trapped by a darkness we cannot escape." "Who trapped you?" I asked, the question spilling out before I could stop it. "The house," she replied, a sorrowful smile crossing her lips. "It feasts on our memories, binding us here, so we can never find peace." I felt a chill wrapping around me. I had to help her and the others. But how? As if reading my thoughts, she gestured toward the mirror. "Confront the truth. It holds the key to our freedom." With a shaky breath, I took a step toward the darkness lurking within the mirror's surface. The shadows in the ballroom turned into chaotic shapes, swirling and convulsing as if in warning. The air grew thick with tension, but I had come too far to turn back now. I reached for the mirror, my heart pounding as my fingers brushed against the cool surface. Suddenly, images began to flash across the glass. Scenes of joy and despair, laughter mingled with tears. I saw the woman's face light up, dancing with a partner under the flickering lights of the ballroom. But then the scene shifted, and darkness engulfed them both. I stumbled backward, overwhelmed. I could feel a presence pressing down on me, a coldness that seeped into my bones. Whispers swirled in my ears, panic taking hold as I stumbled to find my footing. The shadowy figures in the room began to lose their shapes, dissolving into clouds of despair. In a surge of desperation, I focused on the woman in the mirror. What happened? Why are you trapped? I called out, wishing for an answer amidst the chaos. The darkness, it feeds on our fears and regrets, she answered, is a haunt. ING echo that resonated deep within my chest. You must face it. Only then can we be free. Her words struck me like a bolt of lightning. I realized that my own fears might be the very thing keeping them here. With renewed determination, I took a deep breath and stood in front of the mirror once more, letting the swirling darkness seep into my mind. I had to confront my own demons to help them. As I stared into the glass, I felt my heartbeat synchronizing with the pulsing shadows. Memories washed over me. Moments of fear, regret, and loss. Each memory hit with the weight of 1,000 stones. I remembered times when I felt helpless, trapped by circumstances beyond my control. This isn't who I am, I whispered, the words leaving my lips like a prayer. Suddenly, the darkness lashed out, swirling violently around me, trying to suffocate my resolve. I could feel its claws digging into my soul, threatening to pull me under. But I fought back, summoning all the courage I had to face the memories I had always tried to bury. I'm not afraid of you, I shouted, and with each word, the shadows recoiled. You do not control me. The mirror shimmered with a bright light, reflecting the strength I was discovering within. With a final burst of energy, I reached into the mirror, pushing against the overwhelming presence. Let them go, I yelled, the sound echoing through the ballroom like a thunderclap. In response, the darkness screamed, a horrific sound that rattled my very bones. The shadows began to twist and pull, releasing their hold on the figures in the room. I could hear their cries of desperation turning into shouts of hope. The woman stepped forward, her visage becoming clearer as the shadows peeled away. Thank you, she whispered, her voice filled with a bittersweet joy. You've done it. You've broken the chains. With her words, a brilliant light erupted from the mirror, illuminating the room and filling it with warmth. The spectral figures began to dissolve, stretching out their hands toward me, offering gratitude before vanishing into the light. But just as I thought it was over, I felt a sudden lurch beneath my feet. The ground shook violently, and I grabbed onto a nearby chair to steady myself. The mirror cracked, splintering the surface into 1,000 tiny pieces, each shard reflecting a glimpse of the past. No! I cried out, panic rising in my throat. I had freed the souls, but I could feel the remnants of the darkness reassembling, swirling in the corners of the room like an angry storm ready to unleash its fury upon me. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the chaos, a dark silhouette, its features obscured by shadows. I could sense its anger, a malevolence that radiated through the air. You cannot escape, it boomed, sending an icy chill down my spine. I took a step back, ready to flee, but something deep within me held fast. I had come this far and would not let this darkness win. I will find a way to end this. I shouted defiantly, fists clenched at my sides. The shadow paused for a second, as if taken aback by my determination. You think you can defeat me? It hissed, the voice curling around me like smoke. I will bring you back into the abyss. As it lunged toward me, I felt the crackling energy of the locket once again surging through me. Somehow, I knew this was my chance to reclaim my strength and banish the dark once and for all. I took a deep breath and shouted, I refuse to be afraid. You have no power over me. The words echoed in the ballroom, reverberating off the walls as the specter shrieked in fury. I felt a surge of light awaken within my heart, burning brighter with each declaration of defiance. As the shadow loomed closer, I raised my hands, unleashing the light from the locket. It burst forth like a sun breaking through the clouds, illuminating every inch of the room. Shadows recoiled in terror, the darkness unraveling under the intensity of the light. Begone, I cried, and the brightness enveloped the dark figure, consuming it whole. A roar of rage filled the air, but I stood my ground, pouring every ounce of strength into the brilliance. With one final scream, the shadows erupted, dispersing like smoke in the wind. The ballroom shimmered with light, the darkness finally vanquished. Panting and trembling, I looked around as the room transformed once more, the once foreboding atmosphere lifting, replaced by an overwhelming feeling of peace. Everything felt lighter, and I could sense the lingering presence of the free souls, guiding me towards something new. I realized I had not only freed them, but also uncovered my own hidden strength. As I took a deep breath, scanning the now harmonious space, I knew this moment was only the beginning. There were still more secrets of the house waiting for me to discover, and I was ready to uncover each one. With a renewed sense of purpose, I stepped boldly back into the hallway, ready to face whatever came next in this eerie, haunted place. As I moved further down the corridor, the atmosphere shifted once again. The glow from the ballroom faded, leaving me in a dimly lit passage that seemed to stretch endlessly. The walls closed in around me, painted in deep shadows that flickered like dancing ghosts. Each step echoed in the silence, unsettling me. A chill crept over me as I continued. I could almost feel the weight of unseen eyes watching, scrutinizing my every move. I tried to shake off the feeling, reminding myself that I had conquered darkness before. But the whispers returned, weaving around my thoughts like thin tendrils of fog, amplifying my fear. "Go back," they whispered. "You don't belong here." I paused, glancing over my shoulder, but there was nothing behind me except the darkness. The hairs on my neck stood on end as I pressed on, the urge to flee battling with my curiosity. Just then, I noticed a door half open at the end of the hallway. It seemed to beckon me, the weak light spilling out like a hand reaching into the void. Despite my instincts warning me to stay away, I couldn't resist the pull. The door creaked as I nudged it open, revealing a small room dusted with cobwebs, each strand glistening ominously in the dim light. Old furniture stood silently, draped in white sheets, and a single chair faced a wall. My heart raced, and I stepped inside, feeling the air thicken around me like a tightening noose. I was drawn to the chair, which had a strange attraction. It looked as if it was waiting for someone, its back toward me. I hesitated for a moment, sensing something wasn't right. The air became charged with static, causing goosebumps to ripple across my skin as if the room itself held its breath. "Why is this chair here?" I wondered aloud, my voice echoing softly. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, darkening around me. A soft click echoed from the corner, like the sound of a door locking. Panic flared in my chest, and I spun around, heart pounding. But it was only the door behind me slowly swinging shut, sealing my escape. Breath quickening, I turned back to the chair when, to my shock, it began to creak as if someone unseen had taken a seat. I felt an ice-cold draft sweep through the room, filling the space with an unholy chill. The faint smell of burnt wood and ash filled my nostrils, mingling with something rotten that I couldn't place. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I took a cautious step closer, my heart racing, when I noticed something on the wall. Written in a shaky hand, faded letters formed a grim message. "Not all who sit will rise again." My throat went dry, a wave of dread washing over me. I stumbled back, colliding with the door as I tried to process what I had just read. The shadows flickered like candlelight as an unsettling voice filled the air. "Stay with us," it urged, the sound echoing around the room, creeping under my skin. The hairs on the back of my neck stood straight, and I turned to the window, hoping to find a means of escape. As I peered through the dusty glass, I caught a glimpse of the outside world. Dark, swirling clouds loomed ominously, rumbling thunder in the distance. It felt as if the storm was a living entity, listening to my every move. Suddenly, the chair creaked again, louder this time, and my heart dropped as I turned back to it. A figure slowly emerged from the shadows, a silhouette cloaked in darkness, its features blurred and indistinguishable. I could feel its weight in the air, heavy and suffocating. "Join us," it whispered, the words slithering out like smoke. "Get away from me," I screamed, panic washing over me as the figure's hand reached out, fingers elongated and shadow-like. I could see it better now, eyes glimmering brightly in the dark, hollow, haunting, filled with despair. The urge to flee surged within me. I stumbled back, heart racing as everything in the room seemed to close in on me. I slammed against the door, struggling to grasp the handle, but my fingers were trembling too much to find purchase. "Leave now, before it's too late," the figure hissed, its voice echoing in my ears like an ominous warning. I finally managed to twist the handle and throw the door open. I burst out into the hallway, breathing heavily, and took off down the corridor, feeling something shift behind me, a rush of cold air that made my skin crawl. Just as I reached the end of the hall, footsteps echoed behind me, heavy and relentless. I dared a quick glance over my shoulder, but only shadows filled the space I had just fled. "Not again," I whispered to myself, adrenaline coursing through my veins. As I neared another doorway, I could see mist rolling across the floor, twisting like serpents. I hesitated only a second before I stepped through the entrance. Inside was a more intimate space, filled with the scent of damp earth and decay. The air felt thick and heavy, as if pressing down on my chest. In the center of the room, I saw an old, cracked table surrounded by mismatched chairs. On the table lay strange artifacts covered in dust, broken clocks, rusted keys, and what appeared to be a faded photograph. As I approached, I could see a group of happy faces captured in time, but then I noticed that one figure was missing. The memory struck like a knife. One face remained hidden, as if intentionally erased. The temperature dropped as I analyzed the photo, dread curling around my heart. My eyes darted to the surrounding walls, painted in whispers of shadow. Then I heard it, the sound of scratching, soft but growing louder, creeping from the corners of the room. It felt like someone or something was trying to escape, clawing at the walls, desperate. My pulse quickened as the scratching morphed into something more sinister, moans mixed with desperate cries. "Help us," came a raspy voice, distant yet close enough I felt the urgency in my bones. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white, unsure whether to flee or investigate further. The shadows were closing in again, pressing tighter, and I could feel a familiar pull, that eerie voice ringing in my ears. "Help us before it is too late." Without thinking, I moved toward the sound, heart pounding, following it deeper into the obscured corners of the room. Each step I took felt heavier, filled with dread and inevitability. A deep sense of foreboding washed over me. Then I saw it, a darkened opening leading into what appeared to be a cellar. I could feel cold air wafting out, and I caught a glimpse of flickering light within, accompanied by a low, haunting chant. Shadows twisted like smoke, emitting sounds that sent chills down my spine. Do I really want to go down there? I thought, a wave of unease wrapping around me. But the strange pull was stronger than my fear. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever lay ahead. Hesitating only momentarily, I stepped into the darkness. As I descended the creaking stairs, the chanting grew louder, a haunting symphony of despair echoing off the walls. The air thickened with a peculiar scent, something rotten mixed with the smell of old wood. I shivered, glancing around, but the shadows were elusive, slipping in and out of sight. As I reached the bottom, the flickering light revealed a ghastly scene. In the center was a circle drawn with ancient symbols, illuminated by the ghostly glow of candles, all flickering, almost rhythmically, as if responding to some unseen force. Trembling, I stepped closer, drawn to the unnatural sight. The voices were louder now, filling my mind with dread. "You should not have come here," they murmured in unison, chilling me to the core. Then, amidst the flickering light, I noticed figures dressed in tattered robes, weaving through the shadows, their faces concealed by hoods. Their movements were slow and deliberate, as if they were participating in some dark ritual. "Leave this place," one figure commanded, its voice resonating through the air like thunder. "You do not belong." At that moment, I felt the air change, the temperature dropping drastically. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but I was frozen in place, transfixed by the ominous gathering. All of them turned to look at me, their hidden faces emanating a sense of foreboding, a dark energy swirling around them. I felt the weight of their gaze pressing against me, threatening to pull me into the abyss of their ritual. I realized with a jolt that I might be their next offering, a part of their dark enchantment. The terrible truth hit me like a wave. I had stumbled into their lair, the very heart of the darkness I'd fought against. I felt a surge of terror as the flickering candles grew brighter, and I could hear the ancient chants crescendo into a cacophony. "Join us," they implored, their voices melding into one. My heart raced, and I turned to flee, but the shadows seemed to reach for me, latching onto my limbs like icy fingers. I fought against them, spinning around, desperate to escape. "No, not today," I shouted, rallying every ounce of strength within. I focused on the light within the locket, channeling the energy I had felt before. It pulsed within me, a beacon against the encroaching night. "Let me go," I cried, thrusting my hands toward the shadows, trying to push them back. With every ounce of willpower, I unleashed the light, piercing through the darkness. The room exploded with brilliance, momentarily blinding me. Then, in that striking moment, the shadows screamed, a terrible sound echoing through the chamber. The figures scattered, their chants dissolving into panic as the light consumed everything in its path. Just as it seemed like I would be engulfed, I pushed forward, a newfound strength propelling me toward the stairs. Each step felt like an act of defiance, driving away the darkness that attempted to reclaim me. I burst out of the cellar, racing up the steps, the light behind me burning bright and furious. With one final, desperate push, I flung open the door and stumbled into the hallway, breathless and panting. I had fought back. I had survived, but the battle wasn't over. The house still held secrets waiting to be revealed, and I was determined to uncover every last one, no matter how terrifying or treacherous they were. Shaking off the remnants of fear, I stepped back into the hallway. The atmosphere felt different now, charged with something heavy, almost electric. Each breath I took seemed to echo in the silence, the sound reverberating off the walls like an ominous warning. Alone again, I looked around, searching for a sign of where to go next. The old paintings on the walls stared back at me, their subjects appearing more sinister in the dim light. I could sense their eyes following my every move, studying my presence. With a shudder, I turned away and headed toward a door that I hadn't noticed before, its wooden frame draped in cobwebs. As I twisted the handle and pushed the door open, a rancid smell hit me, strong and suffocating. The room was dark, filled only with the faint light spilling in from the hallway. I stepped inside, heart pounding, the door creaking ominously behind me. The chill of the air made goosebumps rise on my arms, and I felt the sense of foreboding intensify. At first, I couldn't see much except for an old table covered in dust and scattered papers. As I stepped closer, my foot kicked something hard. I looked down to find a small, cracked mirror lying half-buried beneath debris. It reflected my startled face, but when I looked deeper, something else shimmered in the glass. The edges of the mirror wavered, and for a brief moment, I could see a fractured glimpse of a past life. Not my own, but someone else's. Dark shadows moved behind me in the reflection, flickering in and out like a bad signal on an old TV. My heart raced as I realized the reflection was not just depicting me. It showed a young girl, pale and frightened, her wide eyes filled with dread. I stepped back, trying to shake the fear clawing at my chest. "What is this?" I whispered to myself, teetering on the edge of panic. Then, without warning, a low, mournful wail erupted from the depths of the room, sending shivers down my spine. It echoed eerily, reverberating against the walls, growing louder and more desperate with each pulse. I felt the ground tremble beneath me, and the air crackled with a static energy that made every hair on my body stand at attention. I glanced back at the mirror, terrified of what it might reveal next. To my horror, the girl's image was gone, replaced by an ominous darkness, swirling and growing closer, as if reaching out towards me. "Get out!" I shouted, tearing my eyes away from the mirror. I couldn't stay here, not when that haunting presence was swirling in the room like a storm. I spun on my heel, ready to flee, but the door slammed shut with a loud bang, locking me inside. Panic surged through me as I yanked at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped, the walls seeming to close in tighter with each passing second. The wailing grew louder, transforming into a cacophony of voices, each one pleading for help, for release, yet all sounding so far away, as if they were trapped in another realm. Feeling the air thicken around me, I dropped to my knees, searching for something, anything that could help me escape. My fingers brushed against the cool surface of the dusty floor, and just like that, I found a small, hidden latch. With shaking hands, I pulled it open, revealing a small compartment. Inside lay a frayed journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. My heart raced as I flipped it open, searching for answers, hoping for clarity in the midst of the chaos. The handwriting was messy, hurried. Scrawled across the pages were notes, details of ancient rituals, and warnings about the darkness that lurked within the house. "It hungers for fear," one line warned. "The more you give, the stronger it becomes." A chill shot through me as I realized that the voices belonged to those who had come before me, who had fallen victim to whatever dark force resided here. I could almost hear their whispers merging with the wailing, each plea a reminder of their suffering. Just then, the overhead lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. My breath caught in my throat as I glanced up, feeling a presence hovering in the shadows, watching me. The scratching returned, echoing all around, becoming a desperate, relentless sound that echoed through the stillness. "Help us!" the disembodied voices cried. The shadows pressed in, suffocating, eager to consume me as they had done to so many others. I could feel the weight of their despair, a collective grief and longing for release. "Not again!" I shouted, clenching the journal tightly to my chest as I frantically searched for a way out. With a sudden surge of courage, I threw myself at the door one last time, leaning into it with all my weight. The wood creaked and protested, but as I pushed harder, I felt something shift within the mechanism. With a final shove, the door burst open, and I stumbled back into the hallway, gasping for air. I could still hear the wailing behind me, echoing through the confines of the house. But now, I was free, and I couldn't waste a moment. I had to escape before whatever was in there found me again. The house felt alive, shifting and breathing around me. The walls whispered secrets, and I could feel the shadows of those who had come before, their restless spirits trying to pull me back into their nightmare. Racing down the hallway, I clutched the journal like a lifeline, desperate for answers. My heart pounded in my chest, matching the footsteps I thought I heard approaching behind me. I glanced over my shoulder, fear tightening my throat, a flicker of movement, a shadow darting just out of view. Then I heard it, a voice mixed among the shadows, weaving through the air. "You cannot leave," it hissed, slicing through the silence like a knife. I picked up my pace, every nerve ending screaming for me to move faster. I burst into another room, the feeling of dread washing over me once again. The room was filled with strange items. Old porcelain dolls with cracked faces, jars filled with murky liquids, and dusty memories from another time that seemed to breathe with life. But what struck me most was the large, ornate mirror standing against the opposite wall. It pulsed gently, a faint glow illuminating the faces of the dolls, casting eerie shadows across the floor. As I stepped closer, I felt a magnetic pull toward it, as if it were calling me. In the mirror, I saw my reflection distorted, twisted by the shadows lurking just behind me. That's when I noticed the figure once more, standing closer than before. My heart raced in panic. It was that dark shape again, its outline barely illuminated behind me. "Join us," it urged, a sinister smile flickering across a face I could barely discern. "Leave me alone!" I screamed, turning to face the figure, but it melted into the shadows, vanishing into the darkness of the room. My breath quickened as I realized I had no idea how many layers of darkness existed within this house. There had to be a way out, a way to end this torment for good. The journal felt warm in my hands as I clutched it tightly, and I flipped through the pages, searching for anything that could help. Underneath the scrawled notes of rituals, I found a passage about using the mirror, a tool to face the true darkness within. Look into the mirror to discover your greatest fear and confront it, the words read. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself, approaching the mirror once more, questioning my own strength. I didn't want to look afraid of what I'd see, but I had come too far to back down now. I took one last glance around the room, sensing the shadows creeping closer, urging me to give in to fear. With trembling hands, I leaned in, forcing myself to gaze into my reflection. As my eyes met the glass, the world around me faded. The darkness coiled up like smoke, enveloping me as the mirror shimmered and shifted, revealing a scene that sent my heart plummeting. I saw myself, but not as I was now. I watched in horror as the reflection morphed into a shell of despair, a version of me trapped in a cycle of fear, consumed by shadows that whispered doubts and regrets. A voice rang in my ears, filled with anguish. "This is what you will become, unless you confront me." The dark figure emerged once more behind the reflection, its shadowy hand reaching out, curling around my throat. "You cannot escape your fate." Frozen, I felt the weight of despair pressing against me. I wanted to look away, to flee, but the reflection held me captive. The figure's grin widened, revealing rows of jagged teeth, a warning of the darkness I had fought before, back in the depths of the house. "You brought this upon yourself," it growled, laughter echoing like steel on bone. In that moment, I understood. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was battling the fears that had haunted me for so long. Clenching the journal, I focused on the light I had felt earlier, the warmth of the locket igniting within me. "I will not let fear define me," I shouted, my voice steady as determination surged through me. Suddenly, the mirror crackled with energy, splintering as light erupted from within. The figure recoiled, dark tendrils curling away from the brilliance. As I stood my ground, light exploded around me, banishing the shadows and illuminating the space. The room swirled in chaos as I felt the grip of despair lift, the laughter silencing into echoes. I knew I had to finish this, and with one final burst of courage, I reached into the mirror, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. I knew I had to finish this, and with one final burst of courage, I reached into the mirror, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. My fingers brushed against the cool surface, and a jolt of electricity surged through me. I felt as if I were being pulled into another world, the light consuming everything around me. The room began to dissolve into a swirl of colors, shapes, and shadows, and I could barely hold on to my sense of self. Suddenly, I was standing in a dark forest, the air thick with fog. The trees towered above me, twisting into shapes that looked almost human, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands, closing in around me. I tried to move, but the ground felt sticky, pulling at my feet with every step. In the distance, I heard the echoing laughter from earlier, taunting me, mingling with whispers that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You think you can escape?" a voice hissed. "You've only just begun." I felt panic rising in my throat as I looked around, searching for any sign of a way out. The trees swayed menacingly, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance and play tricks on my mind. A cold gust of wind brushed past me, and I shivered, feeling the chill seep deep into my bones. Desperate to find a path through this nightmare, I pushed myself forward, but the ground seemed determined to keep me rooted in place. The whispers turned into cries, pleas for help that clawed at my heart. I felt their despair wrapping around me like a heavy shroud, making it harder to breathe. Then I caught sight of a figure moving between the trees. It was small, cloaked, and hurried. Curiosity mixed with fear as I followed it. hoping it could lead me out of this hell. As I approached, the figure turned, revealing the pale, haunted face of the girl from the mirror. "Help me," she cried, her voice trembling. "You have to stop it." "Stop what?" I asked, but the shadows closed in tighter, swallowing her words, as if the forest itself was determined to keep its secrets hidden. Before I could respond, the ground beneath me cracked open, and I stumbled backward, the earth threatening to swallow me whole. I reached for a tree to steady myself, but the bark felt so alive, pulsing like a heartbeat. I could hear the girl's voice again, but now it was a whisper, desperate and urgent. "You can't let it take you. Find the heart of the forest." "What do you mean?" I shouted, but the fog thickened, hiding her from view. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my ankle and looked down to see roots snaking around my feet, pulling me deeper into the darkness. "No, I won't let you take me," I gasped, struggling against their grip. The laughter returned, growing louder, resonating with a twisted delight. The shadows dripped from the trees, forming faces that contorted in agony and pleasure, seeming to savor my fear. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Summoning every ounce of strength I had left, I yanked my foot free and ran deeper into the forest, the echoes of the laughter chasing after me. The more I fled, the stronger the shadows became, clawing at me with icy fingers. The path twisted and turned, leading me to a clearing bathed in moonlight. In the center stood an ancient altar, its stones engraved with symbols that glowed faintly. My heart raced as I approached, the air humming with energy, vibrating with dark power. "Welcome," a voice purred, slithering through the air. It seemed to wrap itself around me, pulling at my thoughts. "You've come to join us, haven't you?" Before I could react, I felt a presence behind me, warm and familiar, but I couldn't turn to look. Instead, I focused on the altar. Something about it beckoned me, a promise of answers and power that tingled in my veins. I could hear the girl's cries fading into the shadows, her pleas turning into desperate warnings. Still, I felt the insistent pull of the altar, urging me to lay my hands upon it. "All you have to do is trust," the voice whispered, soothing yet menacing. As I reached out, I hesitated, a flicker of doubt rising within. "What will it cost me?" I asked, my voice trembling. The shadows seemed to coil tighter around me, awaiting my decision. Silence fell, thick as fog, wrapping around my mind. "Only your fear," it finally said. "Surrender it, and you will gain strength beyond measure." I felt my heart race. Could I really give up my fears? Would surrendering mean losing myself? The darkness pressed in, whispering temptations, promising freedom from the chains holding me back. But something else flickered within me, a spark of resilience, a desire to escape this cycle of despair. I ripped my hands away from the altar, shaking my head. "No!" I shouted. I refused to give in. The shadows recoiled momentarily, surprise rippling through them like a wave. "You should have accepted," the voice hissed, rage building from the depths of the forest. "Now you will suffer." Suddenly, the ground beneath me shook violently, and I stumbled as tendrils of darkness shot up from the earth, wrapping around my legs like snakes. "Help me!" I cried out, feeling panic rise again, but this time I refused to be paralyzed. With my heart pounding, I focused on the little girl's face. "I will not let you take me," I yelled to the shadows, recalling my connection to the locket and the light that saved me before. "Get away from me," I shouted. Drawing upon that flicker of light within me, I shattered the tension surrounding my heart. A radiant glow surged forth, pushing against the darkness that claimed me. The shadows hissed and shrieked, writhing as the light expanded, searing into the depths of the forest. I could feel the tendrils loosening their grip, and I planted my feet firmly, chanting the words from the journal. By the light within, I claimed my power. The words poured from my lips, resonating through the air as brighter light exploded from the center of me, transforming the forest into a radiant haven. The laughter turned to shrieks of despair, the faces of the tortured spirits flashing before me, shifting between relief and anger, longing to be freed. I knew in that moment that my fight was not just for me, but for them too, the ones trapped in shadows, wanting to escape this never-ending torment. I stretched my arms wide, as if to embrace all that darkness, determined to face it head-on. I will not let fear define me, I roared, channeling my determination and courage, willing the shadows to dissolve. With one mighty thrust of light, the forest began to dissolve, the gnarled trees crumbling to dust, leaving behind nothing but the echoes of a battle fought and won. And that's when I heard it, a soft, sweet voice breaking through the chaos and enveloping the air around me like a warm embrace. "Thank you," it said, as the figures of the trapped souls shimmered into view, their faces glowing with relief. They surrounded me, a circle of brightness against the remnants of darkness. "Together, we can be free," I responded, feeling a newfound strength coursing through me. The area cleared, the forest falling away like a curtain, revealing a landscape of light. As the last remnants of shadows scattered, I stood strong, rooted in the knowledge that I had overcome darkness. But deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning. The house still called to me with secrets waiting to be uncovered, and I would not rest until every last shadow was vanquished. As the light faded, I found myself standing alone in the room of the old house once again. The atmosphere felt different now, lighter yet charged with an electric tension that hinted at the battles still to come. I glanced around, the walls still adorned with peeling wallpaper, the air thick with dust. It was as if the house had exhaled, releasing a breath it had held for too long. Each creak of the floorboards under my feet echoed like a whisper, urging me to explore further. With a newfound determination, I stepped cautiously towards the hallway, the shadows still lurking just out of sight. The journal remained clutched tightly in my hand, its pages warm against my palm, filled with knowledge I was ready to embrace. As I ventured deeper, I noticed strange sounds echoing through the corridors, soft thumps like footsteps that danced just ahead of me. It sent a chill down my spine. The house seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the very air thick with anticipation. I could almost hear it breathing, waiting for me to make my next move. Turning a corner, I stumbled upon a door slightly ajar, the faint flicker of light spilling through the crack. My heart raced. Was it a sign of salvation, or a trap waiting to snap shut around me? I hesitated but pushed the door open, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. Inside, I found a room filled with mirrors, each framed in ornate designs that reflected the wavering light. The glass surfaces shimmered, showing not just my reflection, but distortions that twisted my features into something monstrous. I stepped back, the sensation of being watched crawled over my skin. Suddenly, one mirror splintered, sending shards glistening to the floor like fallen stars. A scream erupted from within the glass, piercing through the stillness, filled with agony and despair. "Help me," the voice cried, echoing in my ears like a siren's call, drowning out the doubt. Chills raced down my spine as I realized this was a soul trapped, begging for release. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, the air thick with fear. "Break the glass," it wailed, desperation lacing the words. "Free me from this prison. But beware, the darkness will try to stop you." My heart raced as I considered the consequences. Breaking a mirror was said to bring bad luck. But could leaving this one intact mean the soul would remain trapped forever? I gripped the journal tighter, recalling the power it held, and stepped further into the room. The moment I approached the distressed mirror, the lights flickered violently, shadows swirling around me like angry spirits. Whispers filled the air, rising in urgency, a cacophony of voices warning me to turn back, but I wouldn't. I had to find a way to help. "Don't listen to them," the trapped voice pleaded, growing fainter. "Break it before it's too late." With a deep breath, I raised my arm, aiming for the heart of the mirror. Just as I was about to smash my fist against it, I felt cool fingers wrap around my wrist, pulling me back with a fierce tug. Do not break the mirror. A figure appeared from the shadows, an apparition draped in tattered clothes, their face shrouded in darkness. It was a woman, eyes wide and pleading. You'll unleash something far worse. You must leave now. I struggled against her grip. No, I can't leave them trapped like this. The woman shook her head, her expression a mix of terror and urgency. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Not all spirits desire freedom. Some hunger for revenge. Before I could respond, the mirrors twisted and shimmered, revealing dark scenes flashing by, echoes of anger, fear, and pain. I witnessed memories of lives lost and souls corrupted, each one more unsettling than the last. It felt as if the house was offering glimpses into its past, trying to grab hold of my mind. The suffocating atmosphere threatened to swallow me whole. Please, you must trust me, the woman urged. If you break that glass, it won't be just one soul you free. It will bring forth a darkness that will consume this place, and you with it. Then what do I do? My voice trembled, fear battling with determination. She let go of my wrist, stepping closer to the mirror. The proximity made the room darken. Find the source. There's a heart to this house, hidden in the shadows where light cannot reach. Discover it, and you will unlock the truth. Just as quickly as she appeared, she faded away, leaving me alone with the darkness swirling around me. I could still hear the trapped soul's cries echoing through the mirrors, feeding into my uncertainty. Determined to follow the woman's last words, I pulled away from the mirrors, the sound of cracking glass echoing behind me as I moved through the room. Every corner felt alive, the walls pressing in, whispering doubts in my ear. I shook my head, forcing myself to focus on the task ahead. With the journal open in front of me, I looked for clues that might point the way. There were symbols similar to those on the altar. They swirled and intertwined, leading toward a passage somewhere deep within the house. Find the heart, I whispered to myself, feeling the weight of the mission resting squarely on my shoulders. As I crossed the threshold into the next room, a deep chill enveloped me. It was darker, colder, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. Cobwebs draped thickly along the ceiling, and shadows danced in the corners, waiting for a sign of weakness. I stepped forward cautiously, the floor creaking ominously. The walls felt alive, the shadows whispering and mocking me like a sinister audience. Every movement echoed back, creating a haze of confusion as I fought to focus on what lay ahead. In the center of the room stood a massive wooden door, weathered and worn, its surface etched with symbols that resonated with a familiar energy. I approached carefully, my heart pounding as I reached out to push it open. But just as I touched the handle, I heard it, a low growl emanating from the darkness. Beyond, it rumbled through the floor, vibrating beneath my feet, full of menace. I felt cold spots form around me, the chill crawling up my spine, every nerve ending screaming to run. Just then, the door began to rattle violently, as if something were trying to break free from the other side. I took a step back, heart racing. The handle twisted on its own, and I could feel a powerful force pushing against the door, wanting to escape into this world. Leave this place, a voice roared from beyond the door, deep and guttural. You cannot comprehend the darkness that awaits you. I felt rooted to the spot, terror washing over me. But I remembered the woman's warning. I had to find the heart, regardless of the threat. I can handle it, I shouted back, forcing myself to approach the door once more. With all my strength, I pushed against the heavy wood. The door creaked and groaned, slowly succumbing to my pressure. When it finally burst open, I was met not with light, but a swirling void of darkness, a chasm that seemed to absorb every ounce of light from the room. A figure loomed within, shrouded in shadow, features obscured. Its eyes glinted, glowing like embers in a dying fire. You've come for the heart, haven't you? It hissed, a predatory smile stretching across its face. I stood at the entrance, my heart pounding as I felt the weight of its presence pressing down on me. I will find it, I declared, clenching the journal, renewing my resolve. The figure laughed softly, the sound sending shivers up my spine. Foolish child, you cannot hope to escape your fate. As I stepped further into the abyss, I realized the journey would demand everything from me. It was a battle against darkness, but I was ready. I would not become another lost soul to this place. The heart of this house would be found, and with it, I would bring forth the light. The darkness wrapped around me like a heavy blanket, muffling every sound. My breath came out in short bursts, each exhale seeming to vanish into the thick void. With every step deeper into this dark realm, the air grew colder. I strained my eyes to see, but the shadows danced just beyond my vision, teasing me with their movement. Suddenly, the ground beneath me shifted, feeling as if it were breathing, opening and closing like a mouth waiting to swallow me whole. My stomach dropped, and panic threatened to overtake me as I flailed my arms to regain balance and maintain my footing. Then I heard it. A soft, whispery laughter echoed all around me, seeming to come from all directions. You think you can fight the darkness? You don't belong here. The voice mocked me, chilling my blood. I looked around, trying to find the source, but the shadows cloaked everything in uncertainty. Show yourself, I shouted, my voice trembling yet full of defiance. Why? To watch you fail, it hissed, an echo that felt like a cold wind rushing past my skin. Embrace it. Embrace the fear. It's what you truly desire. I gritted my teeth, refusing to give in to that taunting voice. I called upon the light within me, trying to summon strength from the core of my being. Images of the souls I sought to rescue surged through my mind, fueling my determination. Pressing forward, I came to an expansive chamber. The walls were slick and black, shimmering with an unnatural sheen. The ceiling soared far above me, lost in darkness. It was silent here, and that quiet unnerved me. I could feel a heaviness in the air, a weight of expectation, as if this place anticipated my next move. In the center of the chamber stood an enormous stone pedestal, draped in shadows that writhed like living tendrils. Atop it rested a small, pulsing orb that glowed with an eerie blue light. It beckoned me closer, the pulsations almost rhythmic like a heart beating in time with my own. I stepped cautiously toward the pedestal, every instinct screaming at me to turn and flee. As I reached out to touch the orb, a surge of energy shot through the air, causing the shadows to writhe violently. "No," the voice screeched, now echoing with a fury that rattled my bones. The walls sighed and groaned as if they were coming alive, closing in on me. I pulled my hand back, heart racing. The orb flickered, casting haunting shadows across the chamber, illuminating dark figures that emerged from the corners. Twisted forms with hollow eyes and gaping mouths, grinning at my fear. "Join us," they whispered, their voices a cacophony of anguish. "You can't fight it. Let go of the light." I staggered back, dread flooding my veins. It was clear now. They were spirits trapped by the very darkness I was trying to fight. Their faces shifted and changed, morphing into familiar features, people I had known. I blinked hard, willing the visions away, as they clawed at my mind, hoping to pull me into the depths of despair. "Get away from me!" I yelled fiercely, gripping the edges of the pedestal to steady myself. My voice pierced through the cacophony, silencing the whispers for a brief moment. In that silence, I focused on the orb again. It pulsed with a bright, blue light, and I realized it was the heart of the house, the source of its power, and the key to healing it. I needed to break this binding spell, to release the spirits imprisoned within its walls. I took a deep breath, summoning the courage I had found before. The shadows rustled, and the figures closed in on me, their voices rising in anguished cries. "You will regret this," the voice from earlier threatened, thunderous and furious. "You don't know what you are awakening." Ignoring the fear that clawed at my thoughts, I reached for the orb once more, feeling its warmth radiate as my fingers brushed its surface. I closed my eyes for a heartbeat, allowing the pulsing energy to wash over me, filling me with resolve. Suddenly, the shadows lunged forward, engulfing me in a whirlpool of darkness. I gasped. The air snatched from my lungs as I felt them pressing in all around. They clawed at my skin, whispering all my insecurities and fears, trying to turn my resolve to ash. With every ounce of strength, I channeled the light I had carried, envisioning the lifted souls, the laughter of the freed, and the warm embrace of hope. "Light, guide me!" I shouted, and the pendant glowed brighter at my neck, resonating with my cries. In that moment, the orb exploded with a brilliant light, casting the shadows back, illuminating every corner of the chamber. The figures shrieked, their cries distorted and monstrous as the light tore at their forms. They faded, vanishing like smoke caught in a gust of wind. The light swelled, wrapping around me, a cocoon of warmth that soothed the chill of the darkness. I felt invincible, fueled by the purpose of freeing those souls. But the somber voice echoed back, now barely a whisper. "You may have won this battle, but you cannot defeat the darkness forever." The words chilled me as I reached for the orb, feeling the vibrations that pulsed beneath my fingers. It possessed untold power, a heart beating with the rhythm of the house, every pulse tethered to the spirits bound within. Suddenly, the ground shook beneath me, throwing me off balance. The walls rattled, and cracks splintered the stone floor as if the very structure of the house were buckling under the pressure of what I was awakening. In the chaos, I felt a surge of energy erupting from the orb, sending waves of warmth flooding through me. I could see the light of the orb reaching out to the corners of the room, pulling together pieces of shadow and light, attempting to weave them into a balance. Quickly, a woman's voice echoed, but it was not the ghost from before. This voice was soft, urging me, clear amid the turmoil. "You have to stabilize the heart. It cannot break free of these chains." As the pedestal roared with energy, the shadows fought back, twisting and writhing around my feet, pulling me down as if trying to yank me into the abyss. "No!" I cried out, grasping the orb more tightly, channeling my strength into it. The energy swelled, reaching heights I had never imagined, illuminating everything around me. I closed my eyes again, allowing the warmth to envelop me completely. It was time to resist the darkness. "Let the light break you apart," I roared, my voice echoing with the confidence building inside me. I opened my eyes, lifting the orb higher, and as I did, the shadows screamed again, crumbling into wisps beneath the radiant glow. And then, like the upheaval of a mighty storm, the very ground beneath me erupted in light. Everything trembled, the passageways groaned, and I felt the breath of the house against my skin. I was balancing on the edge of something monumental, ready to tip the scales toward salvation. Yet, the darkness was clever, and in its desperation, it lashed out. Tendrils of shadow burst forward through the cracks, snaking towards me with wrath and fury. "No!" I yelled, summoning every fiber of my being to hold fast to the orb, to anchor the light in this place of despair. I could see figures emerging from the shadows, twisted versions of those lost, their faces merging into one, a monstrous amalgamation of grief and anger. "Foolish child," the collective voice roared. "You cannot hope to take this from us." But even as it roared, the orb pulsed with determination. "I will not surrender," I shouted back, and as I channeled my energy through the orb, I could feel the walls trembling in response. Light exploded from the orb, radiating outward like a sun breaking through clouds, illuminating the grotesque figures that surrounded me. Their forms began to shudder, disintegrating in the brilliance. The shadows hissed and shrieked, clawing at the light, but it overwhelmed them, overwhelming everything. With each pulse, the air felt cleaner, purer, as if the darkness were being pulled into the light itself. The roars transformed into wails, echoes of sorrow resonating through the chamber. Yet, even as I felt the tides turning, I sensed a darkness lingering, a deeper malevolence that had not yet been revealed. It was lurking just beyond the light, waiting for a moment of weakness. "Don't lose hope," the gentle woman's voice urged again, weaving around me like a warm embrace. "You're on the cusp of something great." Bolstered by her encouragement, I clenched the orb tighter, pouring every ounce of hope, love, and resilience into it. This was my chance to turn the tide, to reclaim what the house had stolen. "No more shadows," I yelled, feeling the light surge forward, driven by my newfound strength. The brilliant glow spread like wildfire, wrapping around me, piercing through the darkness that had once seemed all-consuming. The shadows screeched, their forms twisting and distorting in a desperate attempt to escape the light's reach. I could see them melting away, their features contorting with terror as they were consumed by the very radiance they had sought to extinguish. Yet within that chaos, I felt an unsettling presence lurking just beyond the light. It was like a dark energy, taut and ready to snap. I peered into the distance, and the shadows began to coalesce again, forming a mass much larger than before. This wasn't just the spirits of the lost. It was something more sinister, something that had been feeding off their despair for far too long. A more powerful entity was emerging, and it was angry. The air crackled with tension, a storm building around me that made it hard to breathe. I could feel the temperature dropping, frost creeping along the walls, an icy chill that threatened to snuff out my light. The new dark figure stepped into view, a towering presence draped in roiling shadows, with eyes glowing a fierce red. Its grin was wider than any human mouth could stretch, filled with rows of sharp teeth that caught the light and twisted it into something grotesque. "Foolish child," it howled, the sound echoing off the walls like rolling thunder. "Do you really think you can overthrow me? I am despair personified. I am the void you fear. I will not let you win," I shouted back, my voice shaking but filled with determination. I had come this far, faced so much, and now the end was in sight. I gathered my strength, raising the glowing orb high above my head, feeling its warmth pulse through me, confident in its power to repel this creature. The figure lunged forward, slashing through the light with its shadowy claws. I stumbled back, barely dodging as the claws raked the air where I just stood. A shiver ran down my spine, but the truth washed over me. This monstrosity knew fear too. It was terrified of the light, and that realization fueled my resolve. With a fierce yell, I slammed the orb into the cold stone floor. A shockwave of brilliance burst forth, illuminating every crack and crevice. The shadowy figure writhed in agony, its roar echoing through the chamber as the light tore at its dark essence. But this wasn't enough. I had to do more. I thought of the souls saved, the hope waiting to flourish in the light. Channeling everything into the orb, I lost myself in its power, letting it lead me. The fissures in the walls glowed a bright orange, spilling light into the deepest shadows. I could feel the energy growing, expanding, becoming a vortex that sucked in everything around me. The dark figure twisted and spiraled as it struggled against the force, howling in a rage that felt like ice scraping against my skin. I stood firm, heart racing, anchored by the light that began to illuminate the truth hidden behind the shadows. "This is your end," I declared, feeling the very fabric of the air shift with my words. As if answering my vow, the orb flared brilliantly, unleashing tendrils of light that coiled around the figure, pinning it in place. I took a step forward, heart pounding, allowing myself to feel the depth of my intentions pushing through every fiber of my being. "You will never control this house again." With one final push, the light released a mighty pulse, and I felt a rush of energy flow through me unlike anything before. The darkness writhed, losing its form, fizzling away like smoke in a fierce wind. I could hear the anguished screams of the trapped spirits meld with the shadows, their voices blending into a cacophony that spiraled up and into the ceiling before dissipating entirely. Then, just as quickly as it began, everything went still. The remnants of darkness faded into nothingness, and the air grew warmer. I collapsed, breathless, into the light, my body trembling with exhaustion, but filled with a sense of fulfillment. I stood among the glow, feeling the weight of the house lift. It was no longer a vessel of despair. It had become a ward of hope. I looked around at the glimmering walls, illuminated by the light and breathing life into everything it touched. The orb pulsed gently at my feet, a reminder of the battle I had just waged and won. As I started to regain my breath, I thought I caught a glimpse of something moving in the corner of my eye. I turned quickly, feeling the question swirl in my mind. Could it be another spirit or remnants of the darkness? But as I stepped closer, I realized it was something different. Ghostly figures appeared, quietly smiling, the soul's eye had freed. They shimmered softly, wisps of light that surrounded me like a warm embrace. Their expressions were filled with gratitude, and I understood that they had come to thank me for my courage, for fighting for them when no one else had. "We can move on now," one whispered, a delicate voice that echoed with relief. "You have gifted us what we longed for, and we will never forget you." The others nodded, floating gently, their laughter mingling quietly with the light. In that moment, a profound peace washed over me. After all the horrors and chaos, I had fought for what was right. The darkness may have tried to consume me, but it failed. I had uncovered the heart of the house and transformed it back into a sanctuary. As I basked in that gentle warmth, the walls that were once cold and foreboding now pulsed with life. I turned to leave, fully aware that although the darkness had been driven back today, it would always lurk in the shadows. I held my head high, knowing that no matter where I went, I would carry that light with me, a beacon for the lost and a shield against despair. And as I stepped out into the light of day, I knew this was only the beginning.